On the way in, there's a bunch of hats. We thought it was getting cold in June. Like, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of Frederick or Greeley or Niwot. There's white hail covering the ground. They got pelted. I think it dodged Longmont and Boulder, just like passed right between. It was getting a little cold the past couple days. It was 100, and then it was like 70. It's freezing out. So we thought we'd get everyone some winter hats so we can keep warm. Actually, I want one right now. I'm gonna wear one. Yeah. Yes. Cool. So we'll get started now. I think we've waited long enough for everyone to arrive. So welcome to React Denver. Thank you all for coming. I think somebody was wondering on the Meetup page, like, hey, there's all these tornado warnings. Is it safe to come out? And I was like, it's Denver. You know, it's like there's always a tornado warning. You know, it's just whatever. You don't know if it's going to be serious or not. So we'll see what happens. But thank you all for coming. Do stay safe if it does look bad later. Tonight we are sponsored by Workday. So it's a new sponsor for us. I've actually been working at Workday for the past 3 months, and working with Shannon, who helped get me hired, and she's my partner at Workday. If you want to talk about what we're hiring for, Shannon's definitely the best person to talk to. Short of that, I'll be around. But we have a great team, awesome people, great culture. Also sponsored and supported by Turing. Thank you, Turing, for hosting us, as always. This is the best room to have a meetup, obviously. And Granicus for as well supporting our meetup. So who's hiring? I do want to give everyone a chance to say vocally what they'd like to hire for. So if you're hiring, please come up and I'll hand you a mic.
You know me, I'll always talk. I'm Kevin McKernan, lead web engineer at 303 Software. We do kind of a product agency, so we work with companies to build products for them and then maintain. Our stack is React and Node. We're hiring for full stack JavaScript engineers. I think back-end focus is what we're looking for right now, but everybody kind of gets their hands wet everywhere. So yeah, so if you're interested, come talk to me. Who's next?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. And I, like Will said, work at Workday. I am a recruiter, so don't be scared. But I managed to get Will to join us a couple of months ago, and it's been fantastic ever since. So we're always looking. Our Boulder office is booming right now. Workday's a global company. It's an HR finance platform. But Boulder is actually becoming quite a hub. We're growing really quickly. A couple of new teams inside of Workday have sprouted up, and they've decided to host those and house those and staff those in Boulder. So a lot of new emerging technologies inside of the platform. So we're working on a lot of new stuff that is not even released inside of the product yet. So lots of good stuff. We are always looking for front-end React, Angular. Those are our stacks there. But we have a full house in terms of product management, testing, mobile, both Android and iOS. Back-end development, DevOps, so we're always looking for good people to join the team. So thank you so much.
My name is Jason Waldrop. I'm the CTO at GigSmart. Basically, GigSmart is Uber for workers. We've been hiring a lot of people in Denver. We are React Native, mobile first on the front end. We have React, a web app presence as well, and then we're all Elixir on the back end. So I'm sure you won't hear a lot of that, but super cool to work with GraphQL and Relay and everything in the React stack. So we are looking for React Native devs, all levels of experience, so feel free to reach out.
Hi, I'm Regina Papers. I work for Decentrix. We are just a block away. We do revenue optimization for entertainment and media company, and we're looking for a full stack, or actually software engineer. Mostly microservices with Play and Scala in the back end and Angular 6 on the front end. Contact me.
Anyone else? Yeah. Ooh, I like your shirt.
So I'm with Amazon AWS, and we have 2 web developer positions that we're currently hiring for. So We don't hire for specific frameworks, but it is in React, so I thought I'd mention that since we're at a React meetup. But yeah, I can, if somebody wants to come talk to me after, I can show you the specific URLs where the jobs are posted. Otherwise, they're easily findable on Amazon.jobs.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Hester, and I work with Elastic. I'm a consulting engineer there, and we're hiring for a ton of positions. Some of our products include Elasticsearch, Kibana, Beats, and Logstash. But we're looking for front-end engineers for Kibana, for our APM tool, for ingest, just full-stack developers. SwiftType, we recently acquired them, so just a ton of positions. Feel free to contact me after this, and I'll show you the actual jobs page.
Thank you. Was there anyone else? All right. That was terrific. So announcements. I already mentioned Dinosaur. I'll say it one more time. There was 2 tickets on sale where they bought. I won't go back to the page, but I'm so excited for that. Oh, jeez, it's gonna be great. If you're not going to Dinosaur, I will mention another one that's like up and coming and local. The Android 360 conference is here in Denver next month, end of July. Yeah, so I mentioned that because Workday's sponsoring it. We actually wanted to sponsor Dinosaur. It was just like really short notice, and we're trying to get more involved with the community. Hence, sponsoring and supporting the meetup today. So thank you for having us. And are there any other announcements that anybody else has to share with us? Cool. I'll give a shout out to Madison. She has a workshop at Dinosaur, so if you're going, she's got the morning slot with functional programming. It's going to be awesome. And I've got a workshop as well in the morning. But go to hers. She's going to be great. So, so lightning talks. Cool. So we have like 5 or 6 lightning talks, and we're going to keep them to like 5 to 8 minutes so we can get like a bunch of knowledge dropped, learn a bunch of stuff, random stuff, and just like skill up tonight really quickly. So excited to get started. Does somebody have a talk on painless styling? That's you? All right. Come to the stage. Oh, yeah. Do you mind? Okay, cool. And if you are presenting, who is presenting? Let's get that out of the way. Who is presenting? Cool. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Yes. I see at least. What Wi-Fi am I on? Yeah. It's the Turing one, and it's like. Does anybody remember the Turing? The password is complete. So if you're a presenter, that's the Wi-Fi. If you have a Mac, there's this really handy AirPlay thing where we can connect wirelessly, punch in a code, and hijack the presenting. I see you do not, and that is totally cool. I have is that a Chromebook? I have a Chromebook as well. It's like my new favorite machine. We'll just hook up a USB-C or HDMI. Awesome, cool. We'll get that rolling. Nice. What was your name? Drew. We have Drew here, and I'm very excited to hear about some tips for styling in React. Now we'll get out of the way, and you're almost connected. Yeah. Yeah. How do we hook that up? Yeah. 7 minutes. Testing. All right. This will go under lapel when you're ready. I think we have a bunch of new speakers, and if you are a new speaker here, please introduce yourself. I'm so excited to meet a bunch of new people here. Oh, I see it. It's like the fourth one over from the top. Play.
Command enter? What?
Third one over at the top. If you can see your mouse. I can't see your mouse.
I can't see my mouse. I am so close.
Yeah.
We are almost there.
If you can, mirror your display. It works great. Not trying to knock it out. Oh, notes.
You do have notes. Okay.
If you need notes for a lightning talk, bravo, you've prepared.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay? That was a nice little feedback.
Well, I know which one it is now.
Are we good? Hello? Testing, testing, testing. Feedback, feedback.
Hold that button until it turns off.
All right, testing, testing, testing. It's a little tinny. Yeah, that'll do. So anyways, while they're getting set up, hi, my name is Drew. I'm the lead front-end developer for a company called Manifold, manifold.co. We're a cloud services management platform. So I threw together a talk, 5 tips for styling, a lot of CSS issues that our brilliant JavaScript engineers were having trouble with. So these are some tips that I kept giving over and over again and kind of compiled into 5 tips for styling. So I'm going to run through these really, really quick. First tip, stop me if you've heard this before, avoid nested selectors. If you're new to this rule, CSS has what's called specificity. If you have 2 class, it's going to override 1 class. 1 class, 1 element, it's going to override 1 class, no element. ID is going to blow everything else away, and then inline styles trumps everything. So that can be, at first it's like an easy hack. Say you have a button inside a nav. Okay, .nav button. That's easy. But what if we have a menu class? What if we have a menu inside a nav and menu has a button? Well, now we're kind of fighting. What if your styles get compiled and nav comes after menu and you have no guarantee of order? Okay, so we're going to throw important on that. But we got even more stuff. We have an avatar inside menu, inside nav. Kind of sounds like a children's song or something. So then you just kind of throw more classes in the mix, and you can kind of see how this gets out of hand. And for all the wonders of CSS and JS, you can still do the same thing with styled components. So it doesn't make life any easier. So just by adding and chaining classes together over and over and over again, suddenly we have a war. So just sticking to single specificity, styled components, don't nest stuff if you can help it. Same with CSS, keep things to 1 class and 1 class only. Trust me, it's going to make your life so much easier. Okay. Tip 2, keep layout within components. This one's pretty easy. Try to avoid using margin, top left, or any properties on the outside container, or any CSS attributes that kind of stick out of that container. Because in React, we want single responsibility components, and this is part of that. So say you have a card, and you have margin left and right because you want to space it out from the other stuff. So good luck trying to line that up on the edge. It's going to be 8 pixels from the left. Or if you stick it inside a Flex container, suddenly you have 8 pixels on the left and then 16 pixels on the right where they double up. So that gets kind of hairy. So if you need to lay something out, if you have a bunch of cards, kill that margin and instead do a card list. And that is the single responsibility of that component. Components can't or shouldn't lay themselves out because they're just responsible for their own stuff. So following that logic, you can have layout components, and it makes overrides a whole lot simpler and reduces a lot of CSS. And just for kicks, this is a component that I had to mess with over the past couple months. I eventually got so frustrated I blew it away. So a tip, if your component is perpetually 2 pixels lower than it should be and you need to constantly adjust it, maybe refactor that a little bit. Maybe it doesn't always need to be moved up 2 pixels. This is an actual component in our code base when I started. So yeah, avoid stuff like that. Number 3, avoid magic numbers. Magic numbers is a concept in computer science. They're typically weird, unexplained values. So for example, if you have a button, this will probably work, this will match design if you copy stuff out of Sketch, or whatever your designer hands off. Sometimes you'll end up with stuff like this, font size 15 pixels, height 23 pixels, padding bottom 5 pixels, this will work, but what if you need to increase the font size? Have fun dividing 23 by 15. So this will work one time, but it's kind of a magic number because you don't know how these got there. So instead, consider using something like this. You can use relative values like ems. So we have height 2em. That's based off font size 1em. As that font size increases, then the height increases, and then the padding increases. So it's really sensible. We have ratios, and you can see how these just chain off that one value font size. So that's one tip to cut down on magic numbers. Number 4, make breakpoints when it looks weird. So I'm just going to kind of contradict what I just said with magic numbers, and it's okay to just use breakpoints that just work, and that'll save a lot of headache. Like say you have a nav, and it just works at 635 pixels wide, and then it just wraps and gets funky below that. Like just make the breakpoint at 635 pixels, because each component is managing its own layout. It's okay for that component alone to have a weird 635 pixel, because that is self-contained within that component, and that's going to save you the most headache later. If you have a global breakpoint system, it's not going to know how all of your hundreds and hundreds of components work, and that's putting too much burden on like a system. That's just really hard to manage. This is a direct functional layout, so it's okay to have weird values within those components. Those stay within those components, you know where to edit them, you know where to find them, and then they just work. If you're updating the layout of that component, the breakpoints update too. It's just easier. If you don't know where to start, these are good values to start with: 600, 900, 1200, 1800, because that just encompasses a lot of common device sizes pretty neatly. It came from a blog post called "The 100% Correct Way to Do CSS Breakpoints." A little bit of a clickbait title. Not perfect info, but this was one good thing from that post. And then last, don't extend styles. Please repeat yourself. And that's something that I find a lot of engineers doing over and over again, is trying to like abstract and save a lot of work, but it ends just kind of creating like styling tech debt. So even whatever system you use, if you use like SAS or styled components or whatever time saver you use, these are great time savers. They have extend built in. Don't use it because you can even see, like, it's kind of small, but they have, in the styled components one on the right, you have a tomato button extending a normal button, okay? Tomato button makes it apparent that it's extending off another style, but that button, there is nothing there, if these are two different files, to suggest that's being extended. So you might not expect editing one value over here is going to change something way across your app. And that's typically what you do if you extend cross-component. It's okay to kind of do it in the same file, literally right next to each other. So like if you have like a button and a wrapper that have the exact same padding, they're not the same by inheritance, they're the same by coincidence. So you might be tempted to extend wrapper off of button, because if few values line up, but don't. Leave the repetition, it'll cause fewer headaches. If you do need consistent spacing throughout, and if you're using styled components, they have a cool thing called theme provider, where you can inject global values in there. So you can do something like just use like one like space constant throughout your styling system. So there's a really big difference between wrapper always has padding that's equal to button versus wrapper and button both use the global constant of spacing. One is a nightmare to manage, and the other is a considered design system. So that's it. That's 5 tips to make your styling a lot less painless. I am at _DrewPowers on Twitter, and I enjoy fighting about CSS online with strangers. Thanks.
All right, how's that? Everybody see it? Can hear me fine? Cool. How about that? A little better? Cool. All right, so I'm Ben Snyder. I work for Davida. I'm actually by day a iOS native developer, so take everything I say here with a grain of salt because I might just be spreading disinformation. So I'm going to talk today about Gatsby. So Gatsby is a framework built on top of React, essentially, to give you the ability to make React apps, but deploy them as static sites, essentially. And so if you're not familiar with what a static site is, it's a site where all the assets are pre-compiled into just straight HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And your static site is not making any network requests out to an external API to get data. So the idea is you bundle all of your app and all of your content along with a Gatsby deployment. So yeah, like I said, Gatsby is just built on top of React. So really it's just like building a React site, but you're sort of doing some Gatsby specific things to inject your content into that static site. So I like it for, I'm actually using this to build out a new version of my blog because it works well for that kind of content. And it's super fast and it's all SEO optimized without doing crazy things like server-side rendering. So you get a lot of things like progressive web apps out of the box with Gatsby because it implements things like prefetching and cache headers and stuff like that for you kind of out of the box. And so that's Gatsby in a kind of a nutshell. What is actually an interesting trend with Gatsby and React in general is that people are starting to do content sites by using a quote-unquote headless WordPress system. So you use WordPress to manage your content, to write content, and then use its API to feed into Gatsby, and then Gatsby is your front end. So you're sort of like writing a React front end for a WordPress backend. So you're using WordPress for what it's good for, and you're using React for what it's good for. And that's sort of a popular paradigm these days, but for my purposes, it's just a markdown transformation into HTML, essentially. So then that's how I write my blog. So sort of got into a little bit of Gatsby fundamentals, but getting started with Gatsby is super easy. It ships with a CLI. So you just, to start a new Gatsby site, you just do Gatsby new. After you install the Gatsby CLI, you just do Gatsby new, give it a directory, and then it also has this concept of starter packs. So you can get a starter pack for a blog, for instance, and it's formatted to do things like content transformation and also feeds and stuff like that. But they have a whole bunch of different starters that you can just go and grab off of their GitHub repositories. And you can even start in TypeScript if you want, which is pretty cool. So that's how to get started with Gatsby. Super easy. Install to the CLI, and then you just do Gatsby new, and it dumps out a sort of scaffold, kind of like Create React App does. To get into some more of the theory, Gatsby operates sort of on a pipeline system. So it has the concept of these content sources, and a content source is where you want to get your content from. So your content could come from a file system, from a spreadsheet, from a database, from an API. It could come from wherever. Gatsby provides these plugins, essentially, that allow you to go grab your content. And then once you have your content into Gatsby, you then pipe it in through a series of transformations. And the transformations can be anything. So like an image processor, for instance, if you're pulling images out of the hard drive, you can format them for your web page. In my case, I'm using markdown files from the file system, transforming them through markdown remark, which then dumps out HTML, which I can consume in the website itself. So that's sort of part of the pipeline is you have a source, you have a transformation, and at that point it starts feeding into the Gatsby API or the Gatsby like programming interface. Yeah. So once you have that, you then start creating pages in Gatsby, and a page is just a web page, right? So you can create Gatsby web pages using one of two ways. You can statically create them using, by convention, if you put it in the pages folder of the Gatsby scaffold, it'll auto-generate a page for you, and you can even pull data out of Gatsby's API for you. And then also you can do it quote-unquote dynamically, so you can pull data out of GraphQL. So once you put your content through that pipeline, Gatsby exposes your data as a GraphQL feed. And so really you're almost like writing GraphQL queries to get data inside of your React views. And then Gatsby sort of like jamming all those things together and dumping out HTML. So the GraphQL is just an abstraction to give you some niceties to be able to query your data, to get your data in the format that you want it. And then once it's all said and done and compiled by Gatsby, there's no GraphQL queries at all. It's all just compiled into HTML and CSS. So it's a nice programming abstraction on top of essentially GraphQL whereas the compiled site is just HTML. So that's kind of nice. And then actually Gatsby ships with a sort of a router of its own. It's a simplification of React's router, but you essentially can link to pages without linking to a direct URL. So it gives you sort of all the niceties that you're used to from other static site generators like Jekyll and Pelican and other things like that. But instead of writing like HTML templates, you're actually writing React components. So let's look a little bit at that. Actually, let's look at the GraphQL browser first. So Gatsby ships with this GraphQL browser. So all the data that your site exposes through the transformer system is queryable through this GraphQL system, or GraphQL interface. And it's even like it's like a live interface. So it's code complete actually too, which is kind of cool. So I can, if I don't know what I'm looking for, I can just do site metadata and then do, say, title. And then I can run the query, and now I have site metadata title in there. And so this is how you sort of construct your Gatsby views. You ask for data through GraphQL, Gatsby gives it to you as just a JavaScript object, and then you build out your page from there. And the way this all manifests through is you're essentially writing a React app, right? So if we look at my the beta version of my website, it's got this bio component, right? So hello React Denver. It's got this bio component, and in the actual Gatsby sources, it's just this is actually just a React component. The only Gatsby part of this is the Gatsby router. So this is all just standard boilerplate React, right? And it's pretty idiomatic React. So the only real Gatsby thing I'm including here is how to link to another page that's created by Gatsby. So instead of creating an A anchor, I can just link to this contact page, and that links me directly to the /contact page of my Gatsby site. So it's kind of nice actually that Gatsby does a lot of this abstraction for you, and you end up just writing React at the end of the day. And you can go pretty deep into how complex you want your site layout. Obviously it's a React app, so you can get super complex. And you can also pull in things like styled components and whatever you want to pull in really. As long as Gatsby's able to compile it down to just static HTML and JavaScript, you can kind of do what you're used to doing when you're making a React site, but you happen to be deploying it as a static site. And cool, thank you. And the last bit I want to show is it also ships with the sort of auto-watching compiler. So if I make a change, it'll pick that up and then refresh the page, and it'll pick up that new content. So it's that fast. It's pretty quick. It's just like developing a React app with a watching compiler. And then to deploy these static sites is one of the main benefits of deploying it. I just have this hosted on an S3 bucket. And with S3, you can say that this bucket is a static website hosting. You tell it the index.html file, and then it does the rest essentially. So this site is just uploaded through an S3 bucket. I turn on static website hosting. I front the domain with Cloudflare. So Cloudflare, I just have a beta entry that points to my S3 bucket, and then using Cloudflare, I get a free HTTPS certificate and a domain name. So that's sort of Gatsby in a nutshell. You start with your markdown content, pass it through a series of transformations, you get HTML at the end. You can deploy it to S3, and then front it with a Cloudflare DNS. So that's all I had today to talk about. Thanks.
All right, it's quieter than I thought. Is that good? Okay. I know my voice always carries really, really far, so. Okay.
All right, so I didn't do slides tonight. I've just got a couple quick tabs I'm going to run through, and then some code I'll show you. At work, we've been building a lot of apps with Material UI, which is a React component library based on blank screens. It's weird. Okay, great. So we do lots of kind of business applications, not necessarily consumer facing. So the UI design should work well, should look decent, but the like custom design isn't as much of a focus of what we do. So Material is great for this because right out of the box it looks really nice. You can throw a custom color theme on it really easily. So that's Material UI. You can find more info on that at materialui.com. And then along with that, we've got styled components, which this is the third talk to mention styled components, so it must be popular or something. I really like styled components because it's CSS and JavaScript, so you don't have to worry about scoping your CSS, classes, nesting, etc. But you also still get to write CSS. I am not a fan of the kind of object syntax of doing like just React inline styles or some of the other libraries. I really like this because it just looks like CSS. So I threw together a quick little example here. I've got 3 buttons that trigger 3 different modals. So let me show you the first one. So this is, you expect me to work, but I don't. So I was trying to put some styles on this modal. You'll see the background changed colors. This is really tiny. So let's take a look at the code for that. So yes, thank you for the reminder. Mbiggen. Is that good? Okay. So I've got some components I'm pulling in for Material UI. I've got styled components. We'll talk about this one in a sec. So we've got our dialog styles. So I have a dialog component for Material. I pass it into styled components, and I throw some styles on it, and they don't work. So let's see what it should look like. There we go. So I've got a title. I've got a button. The actual dialog itself is pink. If I close it, it closes. So I called this one I work, but I make you want to cry. So this is what the styles for that look like. And it's not that bad. If I had to do this occasionally, it would be fine. So what's going on is when I apply the styles to a dialog, styled components applies the styles to the root element of the component, which is the backdrop, not the actual dialog component. So what I have to do within Material is I have to pass classes down to the paper element of the component. So you'll see this a lot if you're working with Material UI. And then down here, I have to then reference that class, do my styles in there, and that works. So that works. And some of the components you can just do something like this, where you just pass the component into styled and it works. This one happens to work because there's nothing I'm overriding, but you get into some funky fighting with specificity, like the first speaker was talking about. So here we've got the third modal here, which looks just the same as the second one. But if we come look at the styles for that, I'm using a different function called styled MUI. This is a really simple little 100 lines of code package I published on NPM this weekend, where it's pretty much just a shortcut to pass the classes in right up here, and then we can reference them. Another pattern that I don't have in here, but I have in the docs over here. Do I need to bump this text up? Mbiggen. All right. Let's see. Where's the example I'm looking for? Oh, okay. So this is an example of a solution, but not quite the problem. It's actually a dialogue again. I'll just kind of talk about it. So if you're applying styles to the root of a material element and you're trying to override something that's already on that element, your specificity won't be enough because of the injection order of the CSS into the page. And trying to get around that with the way they suggest with Material UI is kind of a pain, doesn't work great with Create React App. You end up having to do a bunch of hacky stuff. So the other thing they suggest is, oh, just wrap all your styles within your styled component in and braces. And if anybody doesn't know what that shortcut does, that applies the styled component class twice, which specificity-wise will get you more specific than materials built-in styles. So that, again, was this like hacky pattern that we found ourselves doing over and over again. So essentially what I've done with styled MUI, or styled components MUI, is it does two things. One, you can pass a custom class as a string if you want to use a custom class. You can also pass an object as this second parameter, which sets the classes on that element, which that's really nice because then you can set multiple classes and then hit them with styles. And then finally, the other thing is that it just, I essentially do this specificity hack on everyone that you do without a class specified. So all of the styles you apply will override the material ones. So great libraries, they just are a little difficult to get to work together, and this makes it a little bit easier. That's it.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, questions?
Yep, so you can do, let me pull up an example. Yeah, so like here's a page out of their docs, and I can barely read that, so there's no way anybody else can. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so you can do this styles, and then way down at the bottom, there's a with styles higher order component, and then in your render, you have to pull in the classes. So for global styles, I do use the theme because you can set, if I want my buttons to have a little bit more padding or always have margins or things like that, the theme works great. But it's anywhere that I may have a custom like layout of a component that I'm building, or we're kind of doing things inside a material, but there's something that none of the material pieces really do what I need to. So I need to do some custom markup to build something. So you can, I just don't like to. I just don't like writing CSS as an object. That's what styled components is for, so that you can just write CSS in your JavaScript. So, but no, to answer your question, you don't have to do this. It's a preference. We use styled components on all of our React projects. So what my goal is that when we start doing an app, if I need to do any global styles through the theme with material, I do that. But anywhere else that I have to like build something custom, need a decent amount of CSS, everybody's just more familiar with styled components. And in our other apps, we don't want to do the object syntax. So just comes down to preferences. So cool. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
There we go. All right. Yes. Very good. All right. Okay, cool. So kind of be a little bit meta. I'm going to talk about presenting just a little bit tonight. But actually looking for an opportunity to talk about Spectacle, which is a tool I use. So Spectacle is a library by Formidable Labs. Ken Wheeler, director of open source there, is pretty much the main proponent behind this. And it's this React-based library for creating sleek presentations. Oh, there's a live demo. I was looking for that actually earlier. Now I just found it. Cool. Yeah, because the colors on this are just really bright and vibrant and nice and pretty. And like one thing I like is this little Pac-Man dude at the bottom. So when you advance slides, it just eats the next bite. I mean, there's actually a cool feature on this slide where it's auto-dimming the picture to do something like put text over it. That's built into it. So all this is done with React components. So editing this is just editing a React app. In fact, I install my slide decks or bootstrap them using create React app and then specifying a scripts package, which is the Spectacle scripts. And there's like a bunch of cool transitions built in. And the ironic thing about this is that I actually don't take advantage of the JSX very much at all. I actually pretty much ditch it. So I want to show you what that looks like for me. Oh, I was going to show you, here's another slide deck, and it's like all React behind the scenes, and it's all built and published. This is Ken's React Europe talk. Here's another example I've got that I'm working on for my workshop. I'm actually going backwards through the deck, but another one I did, where'd the other one go? This is one I did at JSConf Iceland, and oh no, that's not the shortcut. Option O brings the overview. Option P, so I had like a whole ton of speaker notes, which I spent tons of time on. Yeah, I spent a ton of time on, and then I didn't use it all. It was a total waste of time. I mean, it was good preparation. But this is just the presenter view to get speaker notes. There's actually one cool thing in here I want to show. So one of the cool things that can happen when you do these things in React is you can actually build apps into your slide deck, or anything interactive. Like, it doesn't have to be a full-blown app. So this is actually using an extension by James Kyle for code slides. And I can actually specify where I want the focus in my code. And I can walk through and say, hey, we're talking about the it block and the Cypress API here, and here's another thing I want to show, and so forth. So that's really neat, like being able to specify that within a code slide, highlight, focus. And that's like just scratching the surface of what you can do with this. But what I actually end up doing is, this is a good example. So this is actually the presentation file with like all my slides, all my JSX for that Cypress talk. Yeah, bump it up. Yeah, bump it up. So there's like a deck at the top level. There's like slide component, and then you have like headings and text and notes for speaker notes and images and all that. So this is like the normal way to use Spectacle. And if you want to like spend a lot of time making your slides really pretty and interactive, or theming them differently from topic to topic or subtopic to subtopic, you do it here. But what I actually find that I love the most is not even using this. I actually use a feature called the Markdown slide component, and then I just drop in a Markdown file, and then this just creates my slides. So the first one I showed you that was just a white background, that's like all Markdown right now. And what I do with my my end-to-end testing talk was I just did it all in Markdown, and then like a week before I was done iterating, and Markdown is really easy. You just add a slide, I just throw triple dash, put in a new bit of text, and I've got a new slide. So this is really good for just like jamming out really quick iterations. But then when it came time to present, I wanted to make them prettier and do the whole interactive code slide thing. That's when I just ported it all over to JSX bit by bit. And it worked pretty well. So I don't know, Spectacle is pretty sweet. That's not where I want to go. I want to go here. See if there's anything else. Yeah, so I mean, it's the other thing is I use GitHub pages to publish my slides. So the URLs on those before were like my username, github.io, and then the slide deck. And this one, for example, I have, I want to show you in the package JSON. So this is like very few dependencies exposed because it's using create React app, abstracts that for you. It has spectacle scripts here is a little bit new. That's part of like just bringing in spectacle. And then what I end up installing is something, I'm surprised I don't have it here. Maybe I didn't push the master branch, but a gh-pages npm package. And the build for that is, I'll just show you, it's super, super simple. Which one is it? This one. So to push to GitHub pages, there's a little bit more work involved to like get the pathing right, because like where it wants to look for the files. But maybe I'll do do a little bit of contribution to see if I can iron that out. But I am just adding a script for deploy in the GH pages, and I just run yarn deploy or git run, npm run deploy, and it pushes it to GitHub, and my slides are live. So works pretty sweet. I think it's awesome. Any questions? Cool. All right. So I think, unless we have anybody else, we had a couple Sam?
I had the stream going is the problem, so.
Oh. What would you do?
Well, I was going to chat about some of the resources that I've been using lately, especially more so around like VS Code extensions and podcasts, if that's been interesting. So.
There you go.
Sure.
All right, good. We got one more for tonight. Thank you, Sam. Proper lightning talk.
What's that? I was gonna say, you're gonna freak me out. Hopefully I won't have to use it too much. I'm trying to figure out how to get back on AirPlay here. Displays, that'll be it. Yeah. I usually just have mine right up on the top. Which I don't know. There we go.
That, Clark.
Cool. So Regina's gonna have to keep me honest here because I'm not timing myself. So great, thank you. Yeah, so there's just a few items in particular that I wanted to kind of signal boost. Because I don't have my VS Code set up here, there are only a few packages I can remember off the top of my head. I can't go through the list. But there's one in particular lately that I have been taking advantage of, and it's something I learned about actually through a podcast that I listen to. And there are a number of development podcasts that I try to keep up on. I'm just kind of a big podcast buff as it is, and so sometimes like whether I'm doing chores around the house or commuting into work, doesn't matter. If I have any free time where I'm not actively engaged in something, I'm probably listening to a podcast. Sometimes I almost feel like it's unhealthy, but I was listening to Syntax, which Scott Talinsky, he actually gave a talk here a few months ago, and I don't catch every episode they have, but every now and then I'll snag one, and usually like they have some really good information in them that I haven't considered before. And this particular one was about VS Code extensions, and there's one extension in particular that I really liked. It's called Better Comments, and I don't know how many comments you guys write in your code. Do you really? Yeah, I'll check it out. I'll check it out here. So, yeah, I also use Vim mode. So if I fumble around here, it's because I'm expecting Vim and not having it. What's up?
Command N.
You have it?
No, Command N for a new tab.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I was going to do it in your existing code here. So if you have it enabled, right, and you like to write comments, whether you have to get up from your desk and need a quick reminder so you can gain context once you're back at your desk, you can do certain things like have an exclamation point first, and that will highlight it, delete this or something. There's a ton of options. Oops, I'm going to mess this up for you here. To-dos are all highlighted. It just basically it adds different colors for comments depending on what you use. That's going to comment it out there, but you can use a question mark. I've actually found it to be surprisingly helpful, just as far as keeping my comments distinct from the code itself. Some other extensions that I use pretty commonly, I already mentioned the Vim mode, which, that's depending on how you feel about Vim. It's like really helpful. I enjoyed a ton. I was on Vim before VS Code, and so making the switch and having that extension there really helped me. In addition to the VS Code stuff, I did want to shout out a few other podcasts. We were chatting about React Rally, and one of the co-organizers of that event has a podcast that actually Will Klein showed to me. I think they have a website here, Soft Skills Engineering, which, as the title indicates, it's a podcast solely devoted to soft skills, which, you know, I feel like that's an area in which everybody can work on. Doesn't matter what level your communication skills are at. I guess I need to open the page here. But they do a lot of really interesting episodes. This most recent one was, I mean, there's things in there that I think everybody can gain some things from, as far as, like, we all have team members who are a certain way or maybe difficult to work with, or maybe we're trying to interview for a new job, or you know, just all the soft skills things. I found it to be extremely valuable, more so than many of the technical podcasts I listen to. The React podcast is also great, the one that Changelog has been doing recently. Also, they just rebooted their JavaScript Party podcast, which I've gained some really valuable insights from that as well. So if you guys have any others that you really like, I'd love to hear about them. Come find me afterwards. But this is my impromptu lightning talk, so I hope you enjoyed.
Anyone else want to grade? Okay.
Sorry.
It's all right. Cool. Dear. Clark. Come back. All right, cool. So, oh God. All right. So yeah, want to tease the next meetup. So we're actually good for July. We have 2 talks to announce. We have Morgan Whaley coming in to talk about rapid prototyping, and we have Matt Parrish coming in to talk about React Testing Library. Excited to have both of them. I think it'll be her first time speaking at this meetup. Matt's been here before. He's actually lead on my team. He's fantastic. We just switched over to React Testing Library, and it's been so nice. So I've been pushing him to share it, and he's out in Oregon right now, so he couldn't do it, but he'll be back next month for that. But we are looking for speakers in August and beyond. I know some of the people that volunteered for Lightning Talks said that one of the questions I asked in the speaker forum was, would you give a full talk? Definitely, maybe, or never. And there were some nevers. So thank you to the nevers who came and gave a lightning talk. We're really grateful to have you just give a lightning talk. And if you said maybe or definitely, talk to myself, Sam, Kevin, Josh, and we would love to have you up here and give a full talk in the future. Or if you've never given a talk before, it doesn't have to be 20 to 30 minutes. It can be 5 to 15 minutes. We could have a lightning talk as our first talk. So we're always trying to welcome new speakers, get more people on the stage. One of the things that we believe in is just bringing more people out of the community, learning from different perspectives and all of that. And if you're interested in doing the meetup or other meetups or even a conference, that's also something we'd like to help with. Whether if you want to apply to a CFP, Cascadia JS is open right now, and I'm really excited for that. That's back after a hiatus last year. It's in November. Some other great ones. So come talk to us if you're ever interested in doing it. I'll say one more thing. I used to be absolutely afraid of public speaking. Absolutely afraid. You wouldn't think it now, but I was like frightened to death. And I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it, and I'm really glad that I put the effort forth because it's a skill that carries forward in all different facets of my career, and people benefit when you get up and you speak and you share your ideas, and somebody's going to get a lot out of that. With that said, one last thank you to our sponsor, Workday. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you for having us at the same time, and thank you to everyone who came, who said that they're hiring. Thank you for being such a great audience. And get home safe.